Senator Singh.
Thank you. Look, I'd rise to also support this disallowance motion. I think Senator Wright has outlined clearly some of the reasons why this new fee is unfair. It is unfair on debtors. We know very well that voluntary bankruptcy is an important last resort option for those who are unable to pay back unmanageable costs. It does happen. It's not something that people take lightly, but it is an option there. That is an important option. It still, of course, carries with it a very serious social stigma, and therefore financial counsellors know when they deal with clients the awful effect of what that will mean for their clients that they're providing advice and support to, and therefore they don't make that decision lightly. It's not a course taken lightly at all. But bankruptcy offers an orderly process, I suppose, in which all creditors are able to recover some of their outstanding debts without costly debt collection and legal fees, and that really is the key. Without those costly collection and legal fees, it enables debtors to deal with their financial difficulty with some dignity as well. I think it's something where, whilst they don't take the decision lightly, it is in a sense a clearing of the decks, and in that sense allows them to start anew or start afresh. But in doing that now, there is obviously this new fee, which on bankruptcy itself, it just makes those already, I think, at their rock bottom, face just another, very hard financial hurdle. And yes, $120 may not sound a lot, but when you already have however many hundreds or thousands of dollars of debt, another burden of that on top is simply probably too much to bear. So I think that, as Senator Wright pointed out, we are not talking about high flyers here. We are talking about people who are often at their rock bottom, people that often opt for voluntary redundancy are on incomes of less than $20,000. So they are those, poorer members of our society. And I think this level of financial hardship, this $120 fee, for some of those people, if you think about it, if they're on an income of $20,000 or less, that would be like 30% of their weekly income. So those, I think, considering bankruptcy, are often having difficulty at things that we, kind of take for granted every day. They're things like being able to pay their rent, their basic expenses like rent, food, transport and the like. I was actually at the Fitzroy Community Legal Centre last Friday, and we were talking about this very matter. Some of the clients, some of the people that they support and deal with coming through their doors are people facing financial hardship. And it often does start with losing your job, and then this kind of downward spiral that can occur from then on in, where people end up getting into debt because they haven't had that opportunity to find another job, and the debt then keeps piling up. Their rent keeps becoming due, food that they need to get on the table, transport costs, they may have a car, it just goes on and on. You think about someone's life and how easy, if they're already on a low income, it is for them to end up in a debt situation. So I think that the government here has various options for recovering costs of administering bankruptcies, and I don't think the current option that they have is the right one at all. I do think it's unfair. I think the recovery of a small amount of revenue for government shouldn't come at the expense of some of the most desperate people in our country, and that's really what we are talking about here, and that's why I think this disallowance motion is really important. In a sense, this new fee has the kind of absurd effect of rendering, some of some of those in financial hardship, some of those debtors, as too poor to go bankrupt. It's a bit ironic, but that's really kind of where they end up. Those that don't have, access to a line of credit, they will be, compelled. And I would think a lot of them don't have access to a line of credit if they're declaring bankruptcy. They would be in a position where they would be compelled to pay the fee with funds derived from wherever else they have them. And obviously, I think for a lot of those people on very low incomes, the only areas where they could derive funds to pay such a fee would be from their welfare payments. So if they're paying this $120 fee from their welfare payments, then how are they living? How are they providing food for themselves and ongoing needs such as shelter and the like? Of course, then there are charitable institutions. I mean, surely that's not how we see the role of charitable institutions, to actually provide those in need with the money to pay a government fee. That's not the role of charitable institutions. But they're basically what I can think of as the only two options of people that are declaring bankruptcy on very low incomes in this situation. The only two options that they would have to try and find the money to pay this absurd fee. So I did hear Senator Wright comment about discussions and so forth with the Attorney General's Department, I think it was, and that there might be some movement in relation to this, where the government might be reconsidering its options of how to recover such a fee, or whatever it's going to be looking at. I think if that is a real outcome, then that is really, really fantastic. It's really good, and it does show that this disallowance motion is certainly worth its weight in gold in getting change that will actually have an effect out there in the community, for those people most in need. I think that we also need to consider all of this in terms of the financial hardship currently facing a number of people on low incomes. So we've already outlined that people don't take the idea of having to go down the voluntary bankruptcy path lightly, but at the same time, if they are now going to be facing other cuts to basic welfare payments that they have had really to sustain themselves when they've lost a job and the like, then really how is this fair, and how are they going to be able to get back on track? And I think in relation to that, I think of the indexation of the pension, and I'm thinking also of young people who are seeking New Start, those that have lost their job not being able to access that welfare payment. If they've already got some kind of debt that they've been able to pay, and then there isn't even a welfare payment there to support them, that safety net that it is, then really how are they going to get ahead and move on until the next job comes around that corner? That's reality for a lot of people. There's not just someone knocking on the door offering a new job. It does take time in between jobs often when you lose a job before a new one comes around the corner. And it is at that point, that crucial point, that people can fall off the edge in relation to their financial situation and find themselves without any savings, on a low income, having to pay their rent and their food, and their ongoing transport costs and the like, not being able to make ends meet. So we want to ensure, Labor wants to ensure, that we have a safety net for people in this country. I mean, that's why we have made it very clear, our position on the government's budget, that it is a very unfair budget. But I think if you couple that with this fee for those having to make that really hard choice to declare themselves bankrupt, it's just a ridiculous proposition to have someone too poor to declare themselves bankrupt because of another $120 fee that they have to face. I also think the issue that I think Senator Wright touched on in relation to cost shifting to creditors or other agencies is another factor here that the government needs to consider, because that is another potential out of this. And it's one thing for governments to come forward with policy ideas to raise more revenue, but they really need to think about who they're targeting. And in this case, they're targeting some of the most vulnerable, the lowest income Australians, who really deserve, I think, to be given a bit of a support to get back on track, and so they can become contributors again to our society as much as they always have wanted to in the first place. So we support this motion.